Welcome back again to the Bintegers podcast. My name is Biniam. I'm the host of this podcast. This is the place where integrity calls and wholeness manifests. So thrilled to have you joining in on this second part. This is episode number 29. We're talking about overcoming insecurities by embracing integrity. I like I said on the previous podcast, the choice of language. I relish in choosing the right words. And even as I look at this title, Overcoming Insecurities, I was considering other titles like Defeating or all these other things of what I wanted to do to insecurities. But I really appreciate the word overcoming, because in it, I feel this progression, this progressiveness of working through it, and you become an overcomer. You overcome something when you work through it. So overcoming insecurities by embracing integrity. Oh goodness, if there's one thing that we thrive on this podcast, it is magnifying the amazingness of living with integrity. And so when I think of embracing that word, the choice of that word, I think of a really good hug. Do you know what it's like when you hug someone? And I've heard lots of feedback from the hugs that I give, how immersive it is, how complete it feels. It's just the kind that there's no hesitation. It's just like you come in for a hug and you're there, like you're there securely, and there's that holding. And that's what I think of when I think of embracing integrity. It's like, how can we give ourselves to this embrace in such a way that we feel secure? Like we coded it right into the tagline, where integrity calls and wholeness manifests. Like it just wraps you right up. Oh goodness, I'm a little excited. So that's my feelings check in here. Let me just do it really briefly again. This is part 2, like I said, of 2 parts as we address insecurities and how we can overcome them by embracing integrity or committing to walking through integrity. And today there's a refrain that I'm going to keep on repeating, and that is where integrity calls and wholeness manifests. I'm going to almost make that point a few times as I address some of the points that we're going to address here today. And this second part of the podcast, as we reflect on overcoming insecurities by embracing integrity, is more the practical side. The 28th episode is where I was talking more on the ideological level. The here's the why, here's what we're talking about, here's why it's important. But now we want to move into the practical part and saying, here's some tools, here's some skills, here's some things I'd like to share with you so that you can start embarking on your process of transformation, where you are seeing your insecurities not from the vantage point that they still have power over you, but because you see that power diminishing, and eventually you're the one standing above your insecurity and saying, I see you and you have no more power over me. I see you and I reflect on the part you played in my life, but that chapter has come to an end because I'm in a different zone now where I'm walking in my own power. I'm experiencing my own liberation, and I am here on purpose, moving forward into the next version of me that I love and thrive on. So that is what I'm hoping to paint a picture of. But again, like we always do, let me do a quick feelings check-in. And the reason I carve out time for a feelings check-in, my dear Bintegers and my dear listeners, is because I want to make this a normal part of my life and also in your life, where we can just at any moment in the day just do a quick check-in and say, how am I feeling? And as we do so, we give ourselves permission to exist in whatever state we're in on purpose. And we legitimize it, we acknowledge it, we affirm it. Whether it's good or whether it's challenging, it's our way of saying, this is what it means to be human, and I'm doing this on purpose. I'm doing this intentionally, and I'm doing this knowing that it reflects me right now with honesty and integrity. That's why I do this. Does this make sense? So, as you might guess, I'm just a little bit passionate about this, but in my passion, I also want to share the things that make me tick and that get me excited with y'all. So in this moment, how am I feeling? I mentioned on the previous podcast I'm feeling excited. I still am feeling so excited about what we're going to talk about here. But something else I'm also feeling in this moment is a profound sense of gratitude. A profound sense of gratitude because it's been a long road for me to get to this place. It's been a long road for me to come to experience this beauty that I get to experience in the context of this life that I get to live, this beautiful experience whereby I'm savoring it. I'm savoring that I'm aware I'm savoring that I'm content. I'm savoring that one of the happiest places that I get to live on a daily basis is a space between my ears and my mind and my heart. That sense that I've come to experience and affirm and commit to values and convictions that make this alignment so palpable and so meaningful. I'm really grateful, really grateful. So thank you for sitting and observing and being a witness to me as I did my feelings check. And I'd love to hear from you guys how you're feeling as well. This is a beautiful moment that we get to experience on every podcast because we affirm on purpose why we exist and why we're here. Hope that serves you. Okay, on to our substance here. Let me start off again by defining what insecurities are for me. And then I should also define what integrity is. But if you're a regular listener, you kind of know what my definition is. I think there are many definitions of integrity. Here's mine just that I propose to you guys for your consideration. And I like it when people think carefully through and say, are you sure this meets all the criteria? Because are you missing something here? Or this is really good, or that kind of thing. I enjoy that conversation. So for me, integrity first and foremost is the alignment of our internal values with our external actions while we're being true to ourselves and respectful of those around us who are figuring out their own path towards integrity. That's my definition of integrity. I just kind of rattled that off, but there's so much in there that we have many more podcasts to continue to relish. Insecurity, I said, is, for me, insecurity is, the way I would explain insecurity to kids. And I find that helpful sometimes because when you do that, then it's helpful. Here's how I would explain it to adults. It's kind of like it's a subjective perception. It's on an individual basis from person to person. So it's subjective in the individual's perception of how they're flawed or how they're not measuring up to some standard or some ideal or some expectation that is either internally set or externally expressed. So that's what insecurity means to me as I define it. And the way I'd explain it, like I was saying to kids, is it's that feeling you have on the inside when you don't feel like you're good enough. That's what an insecurity to me is at the heart of it. So to get past struggling with these seemingly perpetual existence of insecurities, we must work through them is my commitment. We must work through these insecurities. We must face them. We must challenge them. We must address them. We must work through them. Because when integrity calls, and that's why we're here, we feel the call of integrity. When integrity calls, wholeness manifests. And when wholeness manifests, that feeling where you're all together, like just a geek moment here, the root word for integrity is the mathematical word integer. And an integer stands for a whole number that has no parts to it. And that's the idea we're trying to carry on across here is, what does it look like for us to feel complete and whole and aligned? And this is not a zone that those who struggle with insecurities have much access to, because what insecurities do is they come and divide and conquer and make us feel so fragmented and out of alignment, out of whack. So when integrity calls, wholeness manifests. And that's why I say integrity is the key linchpin for how we address our insecurities and becoming honest with ourselves. So number one, the first thing to do for those struggling with insecurities, which is all of us, is we need to recognize our insecurities. We need to acknowledge our insecurities. We need to identify what our insecurities are. And after we do all of that, we need to accept that these are our insecurities. Not accept that we're going to stay with them, but just accept that they exist. Does that make sense? So this is where integrity calls us first, is honesty. Can you honestly be aware, like self-aware of those things that you find are your insecurities or how they express? Can you honestly acknowledge that you have an anger problem? Can you honestly acknowledge or identify that you have an eating problem? Can you be willing to recognize that you have an image problem when you look at yourself and the way that you reflect or you compare yourself to others? Is there a way that you can honestly come to this table and say, okay, I see it right there, and you're aware of it and you're willing to address it? This is perhaps in relation to like your appearance or your abilities, your relationships, so many aspects, but this is where integrity calls us in the beginning, in addressing where our insecurities are, is can we just identify and acknowledge that they are there and accept that this is where we're at in this moment. And this is what it was for me when I first made this gamut, was I had to look at myself in the mirror and say, my dishonesty has carried me to some very dark places. And I'm about to hurt a lot of people when I tell them the truth. But I'm committed to acknowledging that this is my responsibility here. These insecurities that have led me down these pathways and making all these decisions that are really unfortunate, I had to acknowledge that and I had to face that. That's where this all begins, dear listener. Scary prospect, to be certain, yes. I get it, but it's the beginning place. To do so takes courage, and perhaps it might be overwhelming for you to consider doing that on your own. Is there someone you trust that you can have working with you through this so that they can kind of support and encourage you in the midst of this? And then when you are at the point where you can acknowledge and say, okay, I see you for what you are, and there you are. And one of the ways I'm thinking of helping kids understanding this is I say, play a game of hide and seek with your insecurities, okay? And then go find them. Go find those feelings. Go find those feelings inside that make you feel like you're not good enough. And then start looking for words that describe them. And then when you do that, you're like, I see you, insecurity of fear, or I see you, you insecurity of comparison, or I see you, like, it's almost like that elation when you find in hide and seek, you're the seeker and the feelings of insecurity are the hiders, and you go looking and then you find them, you're like, I got you, and you're like making that expression, you're making a fun basically, right? And you're like, there you are, and you're acknowledging it, and you're saying, I see you for what you are and where you're at. Does that make sense? Okay, time is hastening on me, so let me keep on hurrying here. Once you've done that, number 2, you need to start challenging and examining those stories or those things that make you believe and feed into those securities. You need to start inquiring and investigating what these negative thoughts are, these beliefs, where do they come from, and how are they feeding into your insecurity? You're doing a bit of an operation on saying, let me start understanding here. Ask some questions about these negative thoughts and beliefs that you're facilitating. Ask questions like, are these based on reality, or is this maybe just a distorted perspective or perception that I'm subscribing to? And then start considering replacing those negative thoughts with positive ones. Start considering alternatives. Start giving yourself some options. Start being creative and drawing out other things that you could believe in parallel to these, because right now all you have is just that negative one. But how can you start infusing more options, more varieties of what could also be in relation to these securities? So I don't know, let me choose one with looks. I feel like I'm not good enough when I go out there because I dress poorly or whatever. Okay, that's one insecurity. That's what one thought line that feeds your insecurity. But how about this? I'm actually really unique in the way I choose my wardrobe, or I stand out in some amazing ways that others don't even have the courage. Just like you start giving yourself some options for how to start creating this narrative. So creativity is a really big part of this, but the more options you have, the more you can choose from. And then the way I tell that I'll explain it to kids is, as you look for other options on the feelings, so you feel these feelings that make you feel less than, what are other feelings that you can choose that feel better? And then how can you start playing dress up with those feelings? Try on these insecurities that you've tried for so long. How does that make you feel? Not so good? Okay, try some positive ones. Start dressing yourself up, play dress up with the positive ones, and start feeling how it looks. And then start practicing doing this more so you can start having a shift in your perspective, for example. As you're doing this, my dear listener, listen carefully on these next points. These are really important. Practice self-compassion. Practice self-compassion because remember, we are all struggling with insecurities. This is normal, but be patient as you work through them, because this, listen carefully, is going to take time. It's not an instantaneous snap of the fingers and there you are. It's going to take you time. Give yourself grace, give yourself kindness, give yourself understanding as you work through it, and commit to no comparisons with others. This is a you thing. You work on yourself without comparing yourself to others. This is you working on your own self to experience this. And so make this a you thing, not other thing. Because this is what integrity is, where integrity calls and wholeness manifests. Look for support from others to gain perspective and encouragement and guidance. Find trusted people that you can share and become vulnerable with. Set small achievable goals that you can work yourself towards so that when you mess up, it's not a big fall and you're working your way through to getting better. But remember, this is going to take time, my dear listener, but I'm so excited for the transformation. I hope these insights have been helpful. Thank you so much for listening. Let me know your thoughts. Bye for now.